Shalom Aleichem, Erev Tov, good evening. We are continuing in Rabbeinu Rambam's Mishneh Torah, Laws of Sanhedrin. Before I do that, it's important for me to explain, maybe for those who are new, joining us recently, I am right now in the process of taking apart all of the Pisukim, all of the relevant verses that you are going to need to be familiar with in order to properly understand the Rambam's Laws of Sanhedrin. See, there are two methods to studying Torah. If one, you would call it a method. When I was studying Torah in Yeshiva, before I met Harav Peretz, the style was, let's study the Laws of Sanhedrin. We come across a verse, we'll look into why that verse is here. And it's almost the way to study things backwards. It's like building the second floor without having a first floor, without having a foundation. And so, even though we're taking a significant amount of time to study together the source texts for the Laws of Sanhedrin, I'm certain that once you and I get to the Laws of Sanhedrin proper, you will understand and hopefully appreciate why it is that I'm studying in this method together with you, which is to study all of the Torah material first, and only later to expound on what the rabbis have to say about it, and then to continue in the Rambam's Mishneh Torah. For today's shiur and the Pesukim we're going to be taking apart in the next couple of weeks, you want to be in the book of Vayikra, chapter 19. This is Parashat Kedoshim. One more book. Parashat Kedoshim opens up with the famous words, Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Adonai speaks to Moshe saying, and those are not the famous, those are famous words, but not the famous words I'm referring to. Rather, the next batch of famous words. Daber el kol adat bnei Israel. Speak to the congregation of Israel. Ve'amarta alehem, and you should say to them, Kedoshim tiyu, ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. You should be holy, because I am holy. This verse has so much on it that if you and I were to study for a significant amount of time, what does it mean to be holy? What does it mean to be holy like a Kadosh Baruch Hu is holy? What does even the word holy mean? We could spend eternity together. Right now, I'm not here to deal with that. Jump with me a few verses later. In verse 12. Okay. Verse 12 says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'lo teshaveu v'shmi l'shaker. And if you're in my source sheet, it's going to be source number 1. Do not swear in my name falsely. V'chilalta et shem Elohecha, desecrating the name of your God. Ani Adonai, I am Adonai. Lo ta'ashok et re'acha. Do not, the word oshek could mean many things, but here let's use the word oppress, hurt, fraud. I don't know what words you could use here. Your neighbor, your friend. V'lo tigzol, and don't steal. Lo talin pu'ulat sachir itecha ad boker. And do not hold back the wages of a hired worker until the morning. For every $1 that I got for somebody who keeps kashrut or Shabbat but doesn't pay their workers on time, I would already be wealthy myself. It can be that there are people that don't treat this as a biblical obligation to pay people on time. Lo tekalel cheresh. Do not curse a deaf person. V'lifnei iver lo titen michshol. And do not put a stumbling block before a blind person. V'yareta me'elohecha. And you should have fear from your God. Ani Adonai, I am Adonai. And he continues. Lo ta'asu avel b'mishpat. Do not make a perversion in justice. Lo tisaf fene dal. Do not show favoritism to the poor. V'lo te'edar pene gadol. Don't show favoritism to one who is great. B'tzedek tishpot amitecha. You must judge your fellow man b'tzedek, with righteousness. That's the name of this whole series, Mishpat Tzedek. We have an obligation to not show favoritism, to be impartial. And only then can you call it Mishpat Tzedek. Lo telech rachil be'amecha. So this is already not relevant to us. There are many, many beautiful mitzvot in this parasha. Go all the way to verse 35. So many mitzvot in one parasha. Like some parashot you go through, stories. Then this whole parasha full of densely packed with mitzvot. Lo ta'asu avel b'mishpat. Again, do not make perversion in justice. B'midah, b'mishkal, u'v'misura. Not with the length, nor the weight, nor the volume, the measurements. You cannot pervert measurements. Mozene tzedek, avne tzedek, efat tzedek, v'hin tzedek, yeh lachem. You have to have all kinds of honest scales, weights, measurements. Ani Adonai Elohechem, I am Adonai your God, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, who took you out of Egypt. Ushmartem et kol chukotai ve'et kol mishpatai. And you must observe all of my laws, all of my decrees. Va'asitem otam, and you shall fulfill them. Ani Adonai, I am Adonai. This next section of Pisukim, this batch of Pisukim from Vayikra, that we're about to take apart, are full of an overwhelming amount of mitzvot, not just regular mitzvot, but mitzvot that have to do in particular with Batei Din. That's why I skipped the Pisukim that are not so relevant to the Batei Din. And I hope that I will show you, as we go forward, at least from the writings of Rabbeinu Rambam, what these Pisukim have to do with us, with justice, with Mishpat Tzedek, and why we're focusing on them right now. So again, I'm in the book of Vayikra, chapter 19. I'm in the source sheet. We did now the first few sources in that source sheet. And right now, we will begin to look at these Pisukim. With the first one being Pasuk number 12, which is going to be again source number 1. Lo tishava'u v'shmi nashaker. Don't lie falsely in my name. Do not swear falsely in my name. V'chilalta et shem Elohecha ani Adonai. Because by lying falsely, you will profane the name of Adonai, your God. And that's what we're going to focus on today. B'ezrat Hashem yitbarach. Let's open up the source sheets to Rabbeinu Rambam. In source 8, I show you in the book of the mitzvot where you find this actual mitzvah. But let's take apart the first pasuk in the laws of Shivuot, and laws of oaths. Rabbeinu Rambam's laws of Shivuot, chapter 1. If you have a Mishneh Torah, you can open that up already on your own to the laws of Shivuot. The Rambam begins this entire chapter telling us there are 4 types of Shivuot. And if you and I were going to have a whole course on Shivuot now, so we would do that. But it's not relevant to us right now to get involved in the details, because each one of these categories have categories, and it's not what I came here to study with you right now. But in the third law of the laws of Shivot, Rabbeinu Rambam says the following. Nishba al achat me'arba machalakot elu. If a person swears in one of these ways, ve'chelif, and then he changes, either he says something that's not true, or he changes from what he took an oath about. Let's say he makes an oath that I will not eat, and then he eats. Or he takes an oath and says, or he takes an oath that he ate already, but he did not eat already. Hareizo shivuat sheker. This is a false oath. And about this and everything included in this, it says, V'lo teshave'u v'shmi l'shaker. Do not make a false oath in my name. V'im nishba l'shaker. And if he lies in an oath, bimezid, if he did it intentionally, loke, then he gets malkot. What are malkot?
It says lashes here. Gets beating. He gets a beating.
Yes, lashes in the bedin. There's a punishment. One of the punishments is lashes. Bishogeg, if he did it unintentionally, what does it mean unintentionally? Maybe he didn't realize how big of a deal it was to not keep his word. Could it be? Mevi korban ole v'yored. He brings a sacrifice that's called an ole v'yored, a going up and going down. How do you call that in English? What's the name for that in English? An adjustable guilt offering. Oh my gosh, it sounds bad. Shneimar, like it says, v'ne'ela mimenu v'hu yada v'Hashem. And it was concealed from him, and he did not know, and he became guilty. Let's unpack this for a second. If a person intentionally lies in an oath, they receive lashes in bedin. Okay, tell me the problem with receiving lashes in bedin. Anybody know anything about lashes in bedin?
Get how many? Does it determine how many you get?
No, not that. I want to know what's the problem with giving him lashes for this.
That I don't know.
If you know how to jump around Sefaria, if you could jump to the Rambam's Laws of Sanhedrin, chapter 18, halacha number 2. If somebody wants to send the link in the chat box, I'm eternally grateful to those who know how to do that. So if you go to the halacha, Mishneh Torah, Laws of Sanhedrin, halacha number 2, Rabbeinu Rambam writes, Kol lav she'en bo maaseh, every prohibition that a person violates that is not an action, they don't take an action. For example, it's not a physical action, it's in speech, it's in thought, or it's abstaining from fulfilling a mitzvah, but it's not an action that they took. En lokin alav. Then we don't give lashes to a person for that. Chut, except for minishba, from a person who takes a false oath, umemer. This has to do with the Bet HaMikdash and animals, maybe not relevant right now for us. Someone who switches an animal that was designated for the Bet HaMikdash. Umkalel et chavero b'Shem. And a person who curses their friend with the name of God. Not just a curse, but a curse with the name of God. So we have a rule. The rule is lashes only applies to a person who actually commits a physical crime. Here, when a person makes a false oath, really maybe they could be penalized, but not with lashes. The Rambam mentions there's an exception. Lashes is one of the exceptions. What is the exception that a person who makes a false oath is still committing a crime that is liable for lashes? It's in the verse. So go back to Vayikra, verse 12. What did you see there in the pasuk? It says that what? Don't make an oath falsely. Why not?
It says, using the name of God.
Yeah. What does it continue in the pasuk?
Neither shalt thou profane the name of God. You should not swear by my name falsely. Neither shall you profane the name of God.
Do you see that word neither?
Okay.
It doesn't belong there.
Oh.
Because that's not what the Hebrew says. Now, what does the Hebrew say?
So that's like adding an action to the words.
Very good. Meaning what, Chesky?
It's no longer considered a Lav Shem B'ma, and Shem B'masad is now a positive action that's happening through what he's doing.
Very good. Let's read the verse properly. Do not swear falsely by my name, because when you do, you will be desecrating my name. And therefore, a person who lies in an oath is actually committing an active crime. I'm calling it a crime, an avera, of Chilul Hashem, desecrating God's name. And we're going to spend an entire section next week, B'ezrat Hashem, all about the details of what does it mean, Chilul Hashem and Kiddush Hashem. And these are legal categories, so we have to be precise about how we use them, and we're not beating up every person on the street for behaving in a certain way. But in this particular action, the Creator tells us that saying an oath in my name is actively desecrating my name. And that's what he receives lashes for. Not for the part that is the oath, but for the part that making a false oath is a desecration of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. And then, but that's a very important lesson we just had right now. When I make these source sheets, Sefaria asks me, which English translation do I want to use in the source sheet? And I have like 19 options before it hits like French and German and other languages over there. And all 19 of those translations are they don't make me happy. I see all of them, and there's always a problem with one of them. And I say, I have no choice but to just say, let's read the Hebrew. The English is there to help you read the Hebrew, but never ever read the English instead of the Hebrew. What if I don't know Hebrew? Good, you learn Torah your whole life. So then from now till the day you die, till 120 years, you have a plan to wean yourself as much as you can off the English so that you'll know Hebrew more. Until then, you are reliant on somebody else's interpretation, because everybody's translation is really just an interpretation. There's no way to translate without interpreting. The English words themselves cannot contain all of the meaning of the Hebrew word. So now that we heard this, we know why the person who intentionally makes a false oath, why they get lashes, because they did something wrong. Now what about the one who is bishogeg? He didn't intend to violate this. He has a special kind of offering called the Korban Ole V'Yored. We call it an adjustable guilt offering. And we're familiar with the details of adjustable guilt offerings. What is that Korban Ole V'Yored? Have you ever heard of a sliding scale? What is a sliding scale? Tell me how it works.
The only one I can think of is the offering that you can bring if you don't have that much money for the poor. I didn't know there was one that applies otherwise.
Very good. So here we're talking about a similar thing. Let's talk about how the sliding scale works. If a person is wealthy, they have to bring a full-fledged animal for the sacrifice. If a person is poor, they bring some kind of bird as an offering. And if the person can't even bring that, then they're able to bring even something organic, a plant of sorts, an offering to the Beit HaMikdash. And therefore, this is called a sliding scale sacrifice, or in Hebrew, ole v'yored, meaning ole, it goes up if you're wealthy, yored, it goes down if you're poor. We understand that people make mistakes. We understand that people don't know halakha. So depending on what your financial status is, that's what the Beit HaMikdash is going to determine how much you have to pay for this penalty. That's a korban ole v'yored. Now, this is a random halakha, but I'm hoping that as we learn through the Mishneh Torah, you will keep track of the random terms and phrases that we've studied together, because they will come to help us in the future. Now, if you're here with me already, let's look at the next source, in the 6th chapter of the laws of Shavuot. Okay, chapter number 6. Mi shenishba shivuat bitui. A person who takes one of the types of oaths, it's called a shivuat bitui, v'nicham al shivuato, and then he regrets. The word nicham, Nechama Schwartz in the classroom. Nechama, what does your name mean?
The word that I understand it's the best word is like comfort.
Comfort. Okay, comfort. Why does nechama mean comfort? Because the root, nun, chet, mem, really means to regret something. As in, when someone is hurting, I'm offering my condolences, my regrets. That word also then has a positive connotation. Not just to regret something, but it's the offering that we offer a person comfort when they regret something. And that's why you find in the Mikra also, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, have comfort, my people. The word in its root started off perhaps to regret something, and here that's how we're using it. But it's the same word, and that's why they are connected with each other. So, somebody who took an oath, and then they regret taking this oath. וראה שהוא מצטער אם קיים שבועה זו, and he sees that this fulfillment of this oath is causing him or her suffering. ונהפכה דעתו לדעת אחרת, and whatever was in his mind when he first took this oath is no longer there, meaning he's changed his mind about it. או שנולד לו דבר שלא היה בדעתו בשעת השבועה, or a new thing has come up that originally he didn't regret making this oath, but now circumstances have changed, and because of the new circumstances, he now has a problem on his hands. V'nicham biglalo, and he's regretting it because of that. Harei ze nishal lechacham echad. He goes to one chacham, who's an expert in oaths and vows, או לשלושה הדiotot במקום שאין שם חכם, or to 3, it sounds like idiots, no? 3 regular lay people in a place where there is no chacham, ומתירין לו שבועתו, and they can annul his oath. ויהיה מותר לעשות דבר שנשבע שלא לעשותו, and now he is allowed to do that which he took an oath not to do, או שלא לעשות דבר שנשבע לעשותו, or to not do the thing that he promised he would do, וזהו הנקרא היתר שבועות. And this is what is called the annulment of oaths. So what's the story here? There's a person, and this person took an oath not to do something. For example, not to eat meat. I'm going to give an example. They took an oath not to eat meat. And they were fine. They were really happy being vegetarian. Two things happened to this person. One, he married a carnivore. And this person has no ability to make food for that. Only one, you need to eat meat, you need to eat meat, you need to eat meat. It's really messing up their shalom bayit. Or let's make a better story. This person comes across a medical condition in which they have a severe iron deficiency, and the easiest way for them to solve this problem would be to eat meat. They're not going to die. There are other ways around it, but it would make their life a lot easier. Make a scenario. I'm trying to give you a few that you might be able to think about. In this reality, they didn't regret initially when they made the oath. It was a real oath, but now there's a problem. So what do? They go to a chacham, or to 3 lay people, and they annul their oath. And then they can go ahead and eat meat. How does that sound to you?
Sounds like your oath doesn't have to be very strong.
Sounds like your oath doesn't have to be very strong. Now what's worse, the Torah itself says you cannot break your oath. Don't say something and then not fulfill it. So Rambam continues. V'davar zeh, in this matter, en lo ikar, in the next source, so source 11. This matter, en lo ikar klal b'Torah shebiktav, has no source in the written law at all. There is nowhere in the written law that it says that if your circumstances change and you need to annul your oath, that you can go to a chacham or you can go to 3 lay people and change around what you promised. Would you agree with that sentence? Of course. Ela, rather, kach lamdu mi Moshe Rabbeinu mepi HaKabbalah. This is what we have learned from Moshe, our teacher, in the tradition. Shezeh shekatuv lo yachel devaro. That which it says in the Torah, that you shall not profane your words, which we usually translate to mean, do not take back your words. Shelo yachel hu be'atzmo derech kalut rosh, bish'at benefesh. That a person shouldn't, in a very degrading way, in a very light way, just dismiss the promises they've made. Kinyan shneimar, like it says, v'chilanta Hashem Elohecha, that you are profaning the name of Adonai your God. Aval im nicham v'chazar bo, chacham matir lo. But if he regrets it, then he can go to a chacham and have his words annulled. Meaning, the purpose of this idea of going to the chacham, going in front of 3 lay people, and asking them to annul your words for you, exists precisely because the Torah says your words are important. And if you can always just take back every word that you said, then your word doesn't mean anything. But if there is a process you have to go through, you have to stand in front of a leader of the community, you have to stand in front of 3 of your colleagues in the community and tell them, I promised A, B, C. I need your help to get out of what I promised. You are going to create for yourself a hindrance from always getting rid of your promises. And therefore, we've created a back door. Yes, a rabbinic back door. Sometimes you need to change around the things that you promised, but it's not an easy process. Not everybody can do it whenever they want, however they want. But this whole chapter talks about how you do this, who you're allowed to do it for, who you're not allowed to do this for. And in fact, if I can take you to chapter 12, we'll begin to see just how severely our Chachamim viewed oaths in the first place. So don't understand from here that it's just flippant. Whatever you want to get rid of, you can get rid of. We're going to see some exceptions to that. Jump with me to chapter 12. That's going to be in the next source that you have here in front of you. Let's look at chapter 12. אף על פי שלוקה הנשבע לשווא או על שקר. Even though the person who lies in their oath, or they falsely made an oath, they get lashes in court. וכן הנשבע שבועת העדות או שבועת הפיקדון ומביא קורבן. The same with other types of oaths, and they bring a sacrifice. Why does a person bring a sacrifice?
As they said earlier, is it a guilt sacrifice? They're guilty of doing something, so they offer the sacrifice to get, I guess, repentance. Or
Very good. To atone, to make teshuvah, to do teshuvah for what they did. That's right. אין מתכפר להן עוון השבועה כולו. Nonetheless, they still are not forgiven entirely for the avera of making an oath falsely. שנאמר, because it says in the Torah, כי לא ינקה Adonai, because Adonai will not cleanse this person. אין לזה ניקיון מדין שמיים. A person is never clean from this, absolved from this in the heavenly court. What does it mean in the heavenly court? Where yes then?
Repeat the question again, I'm sorry.
If it says there's no repentance or atonement in the heavenly court, then where is there yes repentance? Where is it? Where is he atoned for?
Amongst us, with the community, amongst it.
Very good. A person, let's say, comes to court, they want to be a witness, they want to give testimony, so they have to be an upstanding witness. They cannot have a criminal proceedings open against them. They can't have crimes that they're guilty of. If a person offered the sacrifice, they took the lashes, they did teshuvah, whatever process they went through, then in terms of community, in terms of the bedin, in terms of society, they go back to being an upstanding member of society because they fixed what they did wrong. But there's one part that they did wrong that they can never fix. Which part is that? עד שיפרעה ממנו על השם הגדול שחילל. Until they take from him what he deserves to happen to him because he desecrated the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. שנאמר, like it says in the Torah, וחיללת את שם אלוהיך אני Adonai. You desecrated the name of Adonai. You're God. לפיכך, and therefore, צריך אדם להיזהר מעוון זה יותר מכל העבירות. A person has to be careful about this prohibition more than any of the other averot. Because there is an element here of, I can do teshuvah, I can repent, I can absolve myself only in this realm. But in the part of the averah that I did, that I spoke falsely, I swore in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu falsely, that part I can't fix. That part is a tremendous teshuvah, and therefore, a person should be really, really careful. It's why from a very young age we tell our children, never say the words, I swear, I promise. By the way, in the culture that we live in right now, that's something people say very, very flippantly. Whatever they want, they say it. And the best part is usually when a person says, I swear, you know they're lying to you. People are always making promises. Usually, I'm telling you the truth. Usually when I hear the words, I'm telling you the truth, I always wonder first off if everything they told me before was a lie. Like if you were telling me, let me tell you the truth. So what were you telling me until now? Was it all a lie? But for now, you don't. Let me tell you the truth. I almost always know that a person who says, let me tell you the truth is lying. We have to be very careful. We never promise. We never take oaths. We never swear. We don't do those things. Unless you are certainly going to fulfill that which you say. We'll talk more about this in a second. Therefore, Rabbeinu Rambam writes in source 13, Avon ze, this avera, min hachamurot hu, it is from the most severe prohibitions in the entire Torah. K'mo shebi'arnu b'ilchot teshuvah, like I already explained in the laws of Teshuvah. Af al pi she'en bo lo karet, even though there is no karet, prohibition, in a false oath. What is karet? It's a spiritual excommunication, a soul being cut off from the nation of Israel, whatever that means. V'lo mitat bedin, and the bedin does not kill a person because of this. Usually you can tell how severe a crime is by the penalty for the crime. So we're not executing people for swearing falsely. They're not excommunicated for that. Yesh bo chilul Hashem hamekudash. But in this prohibition, there's an element of the desecration of God's holy name. Shehu gadol mikol ha'avonot. And that is worse than any of the other averot. The desecration of God's name that we create when we swear in His name falsely. And here is something I want to dwell on with you for a moment. If you will open up, I don't have it in the source sheet because I'm only thinking about it now. The laws of Teshuvah, chapter 1. So if you want to open up sefaria.org, click Halacha, click Mishneh Torah. Give me a moment. Okay.
Is it under Sefer Mada?
Yeah, under the book of Madam, laws of Teshuvah, repentance. Says Rabbeinu Rambam, the first law of the laws of Teshuvah. Something very important that's foundational. Every person needs to know this. Kol ha-mitzvot sheba-Torah. Chapter 1, Halacha 1. All of the mitzvot in the Torah. Ben aseh, ben lo ta'aseh. I know that in English they translate these as positive mitzvot and negative mitzvot. I never understood why you would call a mitzvah a negative mitzvah. Rather, I will say mitzvot of action, like do this, do that, and mitzvot that are passive. So passive mitzvot, active mitzvot and passive, like don't do that, don't eat that. That's what we mean by positive or negative. It's a better word as passive and active, if I could give English words. Im avar adam anachat mehen, if a person violates one of these mitzvot, ben bezadon, ben bishgaga, whether intentionally or unintentionally, k'sheyaseh teshuvah, when a person does teshuvah, v'yashuv mecheto, and he returns from his sin, chayav litvadot ifnei ha'el baruch hu, he must confess in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shneimar, like it says in the Torah, ish or isha, a man or a woman, ki yasu mikol chatot ha'adam lim'ol ma'al b'Adonai, v'ashma ha'nefesh ahi, v'idvadu et chatatam asher asu. That a person who does something wrong must confess in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Confess doesn't mean to go to a booth with a guy with a white collar. It means to verbally acknowledge something that we did wrong in front of our Creator. I have some shiurim and laws of Teshuvah. There's a reason why there's something that I might know that I did something wrong, but to be able to say it out loud, to hear myself say that I did that thing wrong, to articulate it, is a very powerful form of acknowledging the wrong that we've done. There are some people, they're never able to admit what they did wrong. Even though you see they know it, but they have a block. They can't let it out of their lips. Part of our teshuvah process is to let it out. Ze vidui devarim, uvidui ze mitzvat aseh. This is called a verbal confession. And this verbal confession is in itself a positive, meaning an active mitzvah. Okay, how you do this, that's already part of the next halacha. if you look towards the end of the paragraph, you know what, let's read. Are you okay with reading? Can we read a few halachot? Yeah, look. Ketzad mitvadeh, how does a person confess? Omer, they practice, Ana Adonai, please Adonai. Chatati, aviti, pash'ati lefanecha. I did this and this, different words, synonyms for sinning, iniquities. I don't know English words here for that. I did these things wrong. V'asiti kach v'kach, and I did this and that wrong. V'arei nichamti, and I have regretted it. Uvoshti b'ma'asai, and I'm embarrassed about my actions. Ule'olam eni chozer ledavar zeh, and I will never return back to do this again. Zehu ikaro shel havidui. This is the main part of the vidui. V'chol hamarbe lehitvadot u'la'arich b'inyan zeh, harei zeh meshubach. And anybody who is they extend these words, they embellish on them, they speak more about them, they are praiseworthy. You know, when I do vidui, I do vidui every day. I hope you do vidui every day also. But a person, before I do a wedding, I always ask the witnesses to do vidui. And sometimes I tell the couple, like, the couples they prefer to have rabbis be witnesses, and they're not wrong, by the way. It's a good thing to have a Talmid Chacham to be a witness. The problem is that not all Talmidei Chachamim are created equally. And sometimes when I tell a Talmid Chacham, can you please stand up and do vidui with me so we can be kasher witnesses, they think I'm crazy, like I fell off the moon. But I won't do a chuppah until I ask the witnesses to please stand up and do vidui. Ana Adonai, chatati, aviti. But exactly what it says here. I skipped the asiti kach v'kach. I don't know which averot they did. But it's a mitzvah, and I encourage them. I'm also doing it. Let's do it together. It's a positive mitzvah. Who knows? Maybe we heard Lashon Hara on the way here. Something happened. I'm sure you did know averot, but something happened between when you walked into this wedding hall and now you're going to be standing by the chuppah. And this is an important thing. V'chen ba'alei chataot v'ashamot. People that must offer sacrifices. Be'et shemevi'in korbenotehen al shegigatan or al zedonan. When they bring their sacrifice, en mitkaper lahen bekorbanan ad shi'asu teshuvah vidvadu vidui devarim. That killing of the animal does not atone for them until they verbally confess what they did wrong. Shneimar, like it says in Vayikra, v'hitvada asher chata aleha. So for those who say, what do the Jewish people do without sacrifices? The same thing we did with sacrifices. The main part is the teshuvah. That's why you hear the prophets over and over and over again. Why do I need your offerings and your fats and your animals? I'm waiting for you to do teshuvah. We're not telling you there's no importance to the offering of the animal, but the offering of the animal is a very secondary action to the act of teshuvah itself. And you could kill all the goats and all the cows and all the animals you want and never have accomplished one moment of teshuvah in your life. V'chen kol mechuyeve mitot bedin u'mechuyeve malkut. And all people that are either liable to be put to death for the death penalty or lashes in bedin. En mitkaper lehen b'mitatan o bilkiatan ad shi'asu teshuvah v'idvadu. Their death or their lashes, obviously they're not the same thing, they don't atone for them unless they show remorse, regret, and confess what they did wrong. How many murderers on death row get executed with not an ounce of remorse inside of them? So maybe you accomplish removing them from society. You accomplish what you think is some kind of justice of killing them. But if for one moment they didn't say, I regret that I killed this person. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I did wrong. If they don't say those words, their death doesn't matter. Because they left this world as guilty as they were in this world in the first place. וכל החובל בחברו, או המזיק ממונו, and anybody who hurts his friend or hurts his money, steals from him, אף על פי ששילם לו מה שהוא חייב לו, even though you pay back what you owe them, אין מתכפר לו עד שיתוודה וישוב מלעשות כזה לעולם, שנאמר מכל חטאות האדם. A person is never forgiven until they actually do teshuvah, they verbally confess, and they promise never to do it again. So the vidui, the teshuvah element here is crucial. Now that you know all of this, look at the end of the second halakha in the Rambam. The Rambam says, "Umahen hakalot, umahen hachamurot." What are the light averot and what are the severe averot that the Rambam is talking about? Hachamurot, the severe averot, hen ha'averot shechayavim alehen mitot bedin or karet. These are the ones that a person is liable for the death penalty or for a karet, excommunication. Ushvuat shav vasheker, and false oaths. Afal pi she'en bakaret, even though there is none of those, they don't contain one of ththose penalties. Harei hi min hachamurot. It is one of the most severe avirot that a person can do.
Rabbi, this made me think about when he said, if you're gonna before you can bring your offering, if you've done something wrong, for you to get it, right with your fellow man before you bring your offering.
For sure. So for sure, if you steal from somebody, it doesn't help to bring an offering if you steal from somebody. It's why you see that in Parashat Mishpatim, we say that if a person kills another man and he comes to the temple to offer a sacrifice, from my altar you take him to die. Because that sacrifice doesn't cut it. You've done something that requires a different kind of fixing. So now, the Rambam is talking in halakha number 3 and 4, all kinds of what causes for atonement, absolvement, what doesn't. Look at the end of the 4th halakha. It's the end of the 1st chapter. The Rambam says, the Rambam, what am I telling you that these require all these elements for atonement? If there was no desecration of God's name when he violated the prohibition. But someone who desecrates Hashem's name. Even though he did teshuvah. And Yom HaKippurim arrives. And he's still in his teshuvah when he does Yom HaKippurim. And all the suffering comes to him that should atone for his wrongdoing. He does not receive full atonement until he dies. Rather teshuvah, Yom HaKippurim, Yisurin, Sheloshtan Tolin. Rather, the repentance, Yom HaKippurim, the suffering that befalls upon him, those help him in the process of teshuvah. Umita mechaperet, but death, ultimately, when he dies from this world, that is what atones for his avirah. Shneimar v'nigla be'oznai tzavot im yichupar ha'avon hazeh lachem ad temutun. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him that this will be forgiven to you only when you die, says the prophet Yeshayahu. That's a very somber thing. It's not a very inspirational halakha. This is not intended to inspire you for something, rather to inspire you not to do something. When Rabbeinu Rambam tells us, and you can look back in your source sheet, in the source 13, Rabbeinu Rambam says that a false oath is the most severe of the averot in the Torah, though it doesn't have a death penalty, though it doesn't have excommunication. He's telling you something very important. Because it contains inside of it an element of desecration of God's name, don't take that lightly. You think not keeping a promise is just not keeping a promise. But it's not true. When you invoke the name of a Kadosh Baruch Hu and you don't keep a promise, when you invoke the name of a Kadosh Baruch Hu who fulfills his promises, When you invoke the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, His seal is truth, emet, then you can't lie anymore. Because in that name, if you lie, then you are desecrating His name. And that's why the Rambam ends off this entire chapter of oaths. Look at the source 14. The Rambam ends us off with one last halakha. אף על פי שמותר להישאל על השבועה, even though it is permissible to go to a chacham or to 3 lay people and annul your oath, כמו שאמרנו, like we said in the 6th chapter. ואין בזה דופי, and there is nothing wrong with doing it, meaning there are times where that's what you have to do. Furthermore, ומי שליבו נוקפו, this is an interesting expression. You find it in a few places in halakha. Whoever's heart is has like heart palpitations, meaning his conscience is weighing on him. B'davar zeh, regarding the matter of annulment of oaths. Eino ela shemetz sheminut. A person who thinks that there is no mechanism to annul an oath has inside of his heart heresy. Heresy how? Heresy in what? I'm trying to keep the Torah. How can I be a heretic? It's very simple. The Rambam already explained to us in the 3rd chapter of the laws of Teshuvah, for those who've listened to me, my shiurim there on the laws of Teshuvah, that a person who doubts the teachings of our HaShamayim is a heretic. And therefore our HaShamayim tell you there is a mechanism to annul an oath. And you say, no, there can be. That's heresy. But even though, says the Rambam, that it's okay to nullify one's oaths, and there is a mechanism, if you don't believe in the mechanism, there's a part of you that has heresy in it. אף על פי כן, nonetheless, ראוי להיזהר בדבר זה. It's still worthy to be very careful about this. Be careful how? To avoid annulling oaths. ואין נזקקין להיתר, אלא מפני דבר מצווה, או מפני צורך גדול. We don't try to get into a situation where we annul an oath unless it is a matter of a mitzvah or it's something that is a tremendous need for us. וטובה גדולה היא לאדם שלא יישבעה כלל. And it's a very good thing for a person if he never takes an oath, ever. Ever. Just don't do it. Stay away from this. Vim avar, but if you violated it, v'nishba, and you took an oath, sheyitzta'er, let's say you took an oath for something that is causing you suffering, ya'amod b'shuvato, says the Rambam, I recommend that you should still keep your oath. Keep your word. Shneimar, because it says in Tehillim, nishba lehara v'lo yamir, that a person took an oath to do something, even if it's bad, he shouldn't take it back. V'chatuv acharav, and immediately after that in Tehillim it says, Ose ele lo yimot leonam, that a person who does this, they will never fail. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will always support them. A person who keeps their word, even at very grave cost to themselves, there's a special blessing that they have from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of them in a way that He doesn't take care of other people. That's what David HaMelech is trying to tell us. You're familiar with the Tehillim that we read here in Shacharit in the morning? Let me just grab a siddur very quickly. We say here on Sunday morning, we say here Rosh Hashanah, LeDavid mizmor l'Adonai, haaretz umloa, tevel v'yoshev. Yeah, v'yoshev. So we're saying, David HaMelech says that a song to Adonai. Mi ya'aleh v'har Adonai. Who will go up to the mountain of Adonai? Umi yakum bimkom kocho. And who will be able to stand in his holy place? Neki chapayim, one who has clean hands. Uvar levav, and a pure heart. Asher lo nasa lashav nafshi, a person who has not sworn in vain. Velo nishba lemirma, and has not sworn deceitfully. What happens to them? Yisa beracham et Adonai utzedakah me'Elohei yisho. He will receive blessing from Adonai and righteousness from the God of his salvation. When you read these words, you have to ask yourself, I want to make it one day to the mountain of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How will I make it there? With clean hands, with a pure heart, with a mouth that doesn't lie, that doesn't say things falsely. Maybe I can end off the shiur a little bit on a personal note, if it's okay with you. Mori Harav, Zecher Tzadik Livarcha, he named all of his books the same name. As it comes to originality, not the most original. But Mori Harav named all of his books Emet Yaakov. I'll show you one of them. Emet Yaakov, the truth to Yaakov. His name was Yaakov, Yaakov Peretz. And over the years that I helped Harav Peretz put out books and type up books, and I'm responsible for mistakes that are in some of the books, typos. Hopefully he forgave me for that in his life at some point. I once came to visit Harav Peretz in his home on Purim. I don't remember if it was 2010, 2011, somewhere in that time period. And he was just coming out of his house. I missed him. I came later in the day to see him again. He was going out of his house to teach a class. And Harav Peretz said, well, one thing, before you go, I want to tell you something. Purim, Harav Peretz, it was a happy day. He saw me with his book. He said, Rabbi Yonatan, this book, this one, he said, I wrote many books and I've done many mitzvot in my life. When I go up to the Garden of Eden, I'm going to show HaKadosh Baruch Hu this book, and he's going to let me into Gan Eden because I wrote this book. So this one, none of the other ones, he said. None of the other mitzvot that I did. But this book, they're going to let me write in. And when he was in the hospital, I was with him in the days before he died, we had this book with him. That's what he wanted with him, this book. I've never yet taught this book from cover to cover publicly. The book is titled Haemet, Yosher v'Tzedek, truth, honesty, and righteousness. The whole book is about the importance of being a truthful person. Everything you say should be true. Everything you do should be true. Everything you present to the world should be true. Everything you are in yourself should be true. It's a very intense book of Musar that reads very simply. Harav Peretz's writings are deceptively simple, not intentionally. Most people in the world, they're looking for fancy. They're looking for convoluted. That's what makes them think that people are smart and intelligent. And I found over the years of teaching the writings of Harav Peretz to people that unless they're part of our Shiviti Ben Midrash, they don't usually appreciate it. Unless they appreciate clarity and conciseness and honesty and not convoluted pilpulim, casuistry, that they don't usually appreciate the things that are served to them on a silver platter in very clear words. But in the introduction to this book, Mori Harav wrote something very special. Let me just read it to you and I'll end the shiur here. Harav Peretz writes here all of the reasons why people should be honest and truthful. What does it mean to be good? What does it mean to fix your character traits? And this is, there's one other thing that we don't talk about when we talk about truth and honesty and integrity, especially in a world that doesn't always see truth and honesty and integrity. He says, Kiddush Hashem, the act of sanctifying God's name. Katuv, it says in the Torah, in the Parashat Vayitchanan, Ushmartem va'asitem, כי היא חוכמתכם ובינתכם לעיני העמים אשר ישמעון את כל החוקים האלה ואמרו, you should keep the Torah. You should observe the laws. Because it is your wisdom in front of the nations of the world. That when they hear these laws, they will say, רק עם חכם ונבון הגוי הגדול הזה. What a wise and discerning nation this nation is. ומי גוי גדול אשר לא חוקים ומשפטים צדיקים Kichol HaTorah azot. And which other goy? Goy is not a derogatory word. I apologize to all the Jewish people on behalf of some Eastern European Jews who turned the word goy into a racial slur. HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls us goyim, Mikam Chai Yisrael, goy echad ba'aretz. We are called the greatest goy, the one goy, all the time in the Torah we are called goy. This is a name that means nation, and particularly our nation. Which other goy in the world has such righteous mitzvot like the Jewish people? Says Rav Peretz, מפסוקים אלה, from these verses, מובן שהקדוש ברוך הוא מתחשב במה שאומרו ויחשבו הגויים. Says Rav Peretz, from these verses you see that this attitude of we don't care what the nations of the world think about us is wrong. HaKadosh Baruch Hu clearly does care what the reputation of the Jewish people is in the eyes of the world. Shitkadesh vidgadel shemo yitbarach lene'amim, that particularly the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu should become sanctified and glorified in the eyes of the world. V'hava nachora v'navina, let us analyze and understand. Al elu mitzvot v'chukim ha'amim yitpalu v'yishabchu. Which mitzvot exactly are they going to be so surprised and astonished about when they see the Jewish people fulfill them? Le'mor ha'am chacham v'navon hagoy hagadol hazer shelo chukim mishpatim tzadikim. Which beautiful mitzvot are they going to look at the Jewish people and say, wow, that's what makes these people such an incredible nation? Piresh Rashi explains, hagunim umkubalim. People that are hagunim, fair and acceptable. What are the mitzvot that are going to cause the world to say, look what an incredible people, look what a glorious God they have. What a wonderful Torah. Says Rav Peretz sarcastically, Haim ledugma l'isur basar b'chalav? Could it be on the prohibition of eating meat and milk together that the nation, wow, we can't believe that there's a nation on earth that can resist a cheeseburger. That's what's going to make the world proud of us. Or shar machalot asurot, maybe the other forbidden foods. Wow, we can't believe that this nation, they don't eat meat unless it was slaughtered in a very particular way, or they only eat meat after it's been salted, or they don't eat, put a pig. That doesn't make the world impressed with us at all. Alisu chadash, on the prohibited flour, that we don't eat flour that comes from a certain time of the year. Borer b'Shabbat, wow, the Jewish people, they don't separate red jelly beans from green jelly beans on Shabbat. If a lemon seed falls into their salad on Shabbat, what a glorious people. They don't take out the lemon seed. I can make a list for you for mitzvot. Those are the mitzvot that are going to blow away the goyim and show them how great the Torah is. Lo al ele, not on these mitzvot. Ela al mitzvot sheben adam lechavero. It's referring to the mitzvot between us and other people. Uvichlalam v'ikaram. And the main one, himidat ha'emet, ha'yosher, v'hatzedek. That's the title of the book. Truth, honesty, and righteousness. Integrity. That's what makes people. כאשר הגויים רואים ובוחנים אותנו ומוצאים שאנחנו אנשי אמונה, יושר וצדק. When the nations of the world interact with us, they experience us, even they test us, and they see that 10 times out of 10, we come out honest people, righteous people, faithful people, loyal people. מזה הם מתפעלים. This is what astonishes them. ומשבחים, and they praise, ואומרים, and they say, אשרי עם זה שאדוני אלוהיו. How praiseworthy is this nation that has Adonai as their God. נתן להם תורת אמת, יושר וצדק. He gave them a Torah of truth, of honesty, of righteousness. זהו קידוש השם. That is the ultimate sanctification of God's name. וכן זה פשוט וברור. And this is so clear and obvious. שאכן הוא גם אצל אחינו הטועים שאינם שומרים תורה ומצוות. We also have brothers and sisters that are mistaken. They don't observe Torah mitzvot properly. שכשיבקחו לדעת בעסקנו, עמהם באמת יושר וצדק, when they see that in all of our dealings with them, we are honest, we are righteous, we are fair, we are truthful, זה יקרב אותם לעבודת השם ולחזור בתשובה שלמה. That will cause them to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to do teshuvah and return to the arms of their people. Zeu kiddush Hashem. This is the true sanctification of God's name. I grew up in a Midrash I was raised here, where truth is the only thing that matters. Sometimes in a very radical way, sometimes in a way that is not so sustainable in the world that we live in. That's why I have this little corner of the world. I sit with my most truthful people here in Kehillat HaShamayim in San Diego. My friends, mamash, my people that I'm safe with. I learn online with a select few people in certain places, people that I feel I can be honest with, people I feel that I can share Torah of truth with. I don't have to lie, I don't have to deceit, I don't have to show and explain away and apologize. We just get to learn Torah together with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's wisdom that He gave us on Har Sinai. We're here this week and next week and the following week before I take 1 week off to go to Seattle, and then all the way through till Pesach, B'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. In this Mishpat Tzedek class, this shiur which is dedicated to Jewish national law. When you look around right now at everything that is happening in the world, all of the countries that are rising and falling, and none of it makes any sense. Things are happening in the last few years that didn't happen in centuries. And it makes you wonder, what is Am Yisrael's role here? The one thing that I know that Am Yisrael could work on, that we could do better on, that we owe it to ourselves and maybe to the world to have a lighthouse that they can look up to, Emet, Yosher, V'Tzedek. It's not a surprise to me that at the root of believing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to do so truthfully. When you go take a Sefer Torah and you say a blessing over the Sefer Torah, when in the morning you wish to study Torah and you want to say a blessing, men and women, you say, Asher b'char banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu Torato. He chose us from all the nations. He gave us His Torah. What kind of Torah? Torat emet. He gave us a Torah of truth. Not a Torah of lies, not a Torah of corruption, not a Torah of trickery, not a Torah that helps us, well, if he's not Jewish, you could do this, if he's not. All of that stuff is not part of our Torah. Our Torah requires from us integrity. And if there's one thing I will say after 120 years, I hope I created in this Bet Midrash together with the Rabbanit and with all of you, that people should know, people that hang around Shiviti, people that are here, they're good people. They're honest people. They're righteous people. They care about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They care about other people. They care to do things the right way, even if the whole world tells them, you could cut this corner, you could... Never. Never, ever, ever. Because the menuchat nefesh, the calm that comes to you, the refinement of character that comes to you, the closeness to the Creator who is truth itself, that comes to you when you are truthful, all of the trickery and the deceit in the world, none of it matters. It all goes away. All those shadows dissipate from the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I bless us all as we restart this learning journey. I was so grateful to see so many of you in New York and then in Florida, and then B'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue on these road trips to keep seeing everybody. I invite you all to visit us here. I wish for you to remember that at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a Torah, but a Torah of truth. And when we spend time, a whole shiur, what does it mean to be truthful? It means to sanctify God's name in the world. So the next week's shiur is going to be all about, what does a Kiddush Hashem really mean? What does a Chilul Hashem really mean? What does it mean to sanctify or desecrate God's name? It's a very complicated English. What does it actually mean practically? B'ezrat Hashem, that's for a shiur next week. For right now, thank you for learning with me. Thank you for letting me go over time a little bit. And B'ezrat Hashem, I hope to see you here already in the next shiur this week or already next week. B'ezrat Hashem.